because this is a collaborative effort. I even contributed to it, even though I'm not really an artist. Shach is the artist in residence. And we want to document it because it's composed of 11 images put on the wall here, and they're going to be taken down, and the installation will no longer exist. They're collaging history. And the point is that putting different images together kind of creates different ideas in your mind, taking them out of context, putting them into another context. And we found the experience really interesting. Chacha basically directed this, and other people like me contributed to it. The Collaging History wall installation. And you can see what we're doing is using a lot of imagery from history books, and also people added their own images. And newspapers, current newspapers, older history books, getting different kinds of feelings of how people saw history in the past. Draw pictures of George Washington, and they were also learning Chinese, so they actually put the name Washington in Chinese here. Putting things together, not worrying about telling a linear story or making linear connections, but putting things together based by how, visual elements that occurred. In certain areas of the walls here developed certain themes. Things started and kind of as a nucleus and then grew, like this area with this idea of kings and queens. And obviously we have what everybody knows about recently, Kate and William, and that's the obvious choice for royalty. But we have other royalty. We have Oprah and movie stars and different media figures, and that kind of playing with that idea of how we treat all these people, some of which are actual royalty and not a lot of them who are not. But it's funny, the Kate and William wedding happened just this morning. And of course we have figures of Madonna, Lady Gaga, and all these other quasi-royalty that we're aware of, and pictures of models and things. All these things kind of grew together gradually over about a 2-month or 3-month period. People adding their own ideas, clippings. In this section, a woman came in and kind of started the nucleus of this section, and it seemed to have to do with the idea of people speaking in protest, speaking about things that are important to them, demonstrating, groups of people getting together to demonstrate. This is fundamental in history, these movements of different countries, the United States history and elsewhere. We have images from Egypt as well here, recent events. Funny thing is we noticed is that the imagery we borrowed from books from the 60s showed demonstrators in the US, and they were all young, in their early 20s. But now the demonstrations seem to be composed of people in their 50s. So I don't know if those are the same people from the 60s, but that's the nature of our demonstrations here in this country. Demonstrations in other countries still seem to be composed mainly of younger people. So you learn things about the world just by doing this. Kind of notice things you wouldn't have noticed otherwise. It comes in frequently. Sarah started this kind of section, form and motion, and the motion idea built up here with transportation, modes of transportation, the idea of motion through history. I even started to notice things about having to do with expansion, motion across the United States when it was populated. The idea of odd occurrences with vehicles like boats on land, planes on water. Thought that was kind of funny how those things came together. I started thinking about domestic issues or how we live, suburban lifestyles. Frank Lloyd Wright, his house has kind of started to define suburbia. So these ideas kind of grow, and sometimes a section starts and it doesn't go anywhere. So we didn't push it. If it wasn't working, we didn't try to force it to grow. It's more the idea and how it relates to American history. Obviously the Boston Tea Party, the idea of tea, the idea of pouring started to come out, just having fun with the idea. And these are pictures of recently deceased people, which are kind of part of that stream of tea. So And there were pictures even that we found of people pouring things, and I just thought that was surprising. We could actually find those things without the use of the internet. And this was all built on paper documents, no internet searches, no Google here. And of course, the ties to economic importance of our country and the world, and the importance of growth and becoming rich in the United States. I had to emphasize that somewhere. This section kind of exploded, and it's kind of a men section. You could call it men in uniforms and helmets. And I don't know what it was. Obviously in history, a lot of pictures of people fighting, Vietnam, etc., recent wars. And of course, they were all in helmets. And I noticed that these football imagery, especially from the 60s, which I kind of liked, the kind of old-fashioned football imagery, they're in helmets and uniforms, and they're behaving very aggressively, and they're in a way fighting, and it's just the interesting connections there. Groups of men being very active, doing what men do. Even have a picture contributed by a young artist. He decided he wanted to draw his own picture, where she is taking this resolve and resolving the issue of missiles. So that's something she added to kind of cancel out the effects of the missiles. So, like I say, these things kind of grow out of control. I think this section grew a little bit out of control in a way. And then there's a food section that was just starting to grow recently, and obviously famine is part of history, and also oversupply of food, overeating. Of course, we know about that part of our history. There's something I was having fun with. The use of animals by human beings comes up again and again. Here they're being used for entertainment, basically. And I think Chacha had the idea of putting things around their head, or somebody got that idea, and I started thinking of it as a halo. So most of the animals here have halos on them, as they deserve. That's the conductor of the Detroit Symphony Orchestra, blown up. So one of the questions in this Collaging history show is, who's conducting history? Well, it's a great rhetorical question to think about. Probably a good place to focus on is this woman's area. I call it the woman's area. I don't know if that's a good name for it, but one strange thing is how many photographs we found women holding guns and things like. I don't know if this is the new thing, but I found that kind of fascinating. In another section that kind of grew out of control, and I was surprised, and I think I started this section with just one picture. It might have been of these people. No, maybe Chacha started it with this picture of the woman with her hands up. And then I started finding all kinds of pictures of men with their hands up. And for one reason or another, there's multiple gestures you can make by putting your arms up or your hands up. And I kept finding photographs of men using their hands or gesturing with their arms or hands, whether it was in sports or the Pope, or to make a point, to point at things, gesture, express emotion, anger, happiness, high fives. So it's interesting how many journalists or photojournalists seem to think photographs of men with their arms up, are compelling things to photograph. So, and then we have this other flock here that other people contributed. So all these are made by different people who came in and step by step were guided in drawing their own bird, and they all came out completely different. Obviously, everybody has their own style, even when they're all working with the same step-by-step method. And of course, they're flying off into the rest of the collage.